builders making moves, the projects shaping the culture, the unfiltered thinking behind it all. This is Let's Ride, the weekly podcast from BMX that takes you inside the on-chain world. Welcome to the ride.
Hello, GM everybody. Welcome to this week's episode of Let's Ride, brought to you by BMX. Super excited today. We have an incredible guest from Nillion Network. We have Juan with us here today. And yeah, we're going to go ahead and kick things off. For those of you that don't know, my name is Rachel. I go by Rachel Onchain. I'm the host for these shows. Here with my co-host Deez. I'm actually going to pass it off to Deez to do our disclaimer and just give an overview of all things BMX. GM Deez. Oh, I'm not able to hear Deez. I think we lost him. Well, I'll start with our disclaimer because I'm not able to hear Deez. Deez might be muted. Check. All right, well, I will start with our disclaimer then while Deez is getting his mic sorted. So nothing here that we discuss today is financial advice. We encourage everybody to do their own research always. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only for the community. So yeah, I just wanted to get that out of the way before we dive in. And yeah, when Deez comes back, he will give the updates from the BMX side. So Juan, how's it going today?
It's going great. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited. I'm excited for today's talk.
Yeah, Matt, it's great to connect with you. I think we got Deez back. I heard something.
Testing.
There we go. Awesome. All right. So yeah, Deez, just went through the disclaimer, saying hello to Juan here. If you want to kind of give your updates on the BMX side.
Yeah, absolutely excited about today's podcast for sure. We are in our final stages of audit for Deli Swap, still going back and forth with Sherlock, but we are very, very close. So excited about rolling that out. And then for those of you new to BMX and wondering what we do, we're solving the problem of the chase. And what do I mean by the chase? Like for LPs, for people holding crypto assets, there's a lot of choices in crypto, always looking around for the highest yields, returns, places just to park assets, but keep your exposure to the market. And BMX solves that with a couple things. It revolves around WBLT, which is our flagship liquidity product, which is Bitcoin, ETH, and USDC. So people are comfortable holding those assets. It's a very powerful vault. And then a lot of our products are built on top of that. So we have Deli Swap that's coming out that every pair is with that. And then we have our perps market that also taps into that for counterparty liquidity. And then we also have NFT marketplace and another intense perp market, which actually uses liquidity on off-chain with intents. But all of BMX's products look to capture fees from real use cases across DeFi, across the base chain, across multiple ecosystems, and route those fees back to token holders. And so people can feel a little bit more comfortable parking and knowing that the ecosystem is working in a very channeled fashion. But if you're curious, follow BMX DeFi on X. We've got amazing educational resources. And yeah, without further ado, let's dig in with Nillion today. Privacy is the topic.
Let's go. And I know a lot of folks in the BMX universe, are big proponents of privacy in the on-chain space. It's incredibly important. And Nillion is tackling that privacy in the on-chain space. And I'm curious, Juan, if you can just give an overview of, who you are, what your role is, what Nillion is, and then we can dive into why privacy is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Juan, for those of you who don't know me, because I think we have some Nillion community members also listening to the stream right now. I lead growth here at Nillion, and that basically means working with all of the third-party ecosystem applications and builders building on our tech stack, as well as leading our own in-house applications, which I'll speak a little bit to later in this conversation. What Nillion is and what Nillion does is it offers a service called Blind Compute. And Blind Compute is essentially a way of not just storing data, but also computing on it, hence the name, with different AI models without ever actually exposing that underlying data. And there's a million reasons why you might not want to do that, which we'll go into, but primarily it's proprietary data, sensitive data that for one reason or another, whether that's a commercial reason or a personal reason, you don't want to expose to a third party. We allow you to run the latest AI models on that data without ever actually decrypting it. And we can go into how that works in a little more detail, but that's what we are doing here at Nillion.
Yeah, that's really incredible. And I feel like in this space, privacy, the meta around privacy has kind of shifted over the years. I remember like a lot of projects were really prioritizing this. Then kind of as the years went on, with things like Tornado Cash, it became something that projects prioritize less and less. So hats off to you guys for sticking with that, right? And staying true and like maintaining that integrity with what you believe in. Um, by the way, I see some folks in the live stream chat. Shout out to Dialethia. If anybody has any questions throughout this stream, feel free to drop them in the live stream chat. We will be paying attention throughout the stream. If you have any questions for Nillion, for Juan, or for the BMX team, feel free to drop them. So yeah, let's go ahead and dig in. So, we touched on at a high level what Nillion is, what you guys are focused on. But Juan, I'm curious to hear your perspective on why privacy is more important now more than ever.
Yeah, sure. So I actually, so there's two sorts of things that I think people probably want to hear about in this conversation. One is what is data privacy, and then what is on-chain financial privacy, right? So we can split those into two separate things, but I think they're very closely related. It's like yin and yang. So let's start on the data privacy side because that's what we're focused on here.
My yin and yang, right? My mom.
There you go. I didn't even see that. So
yeah.
There you go. That's a good omen. Yeah, just on the data privacy side, I think people think, well, I'm not really that important, or I don't have anything to hide, or whatever else it is, so who cares if people see my data? And it's like, okay, you may think that now, but would you change your mind if you consider the fact that all the data that you're leaking is data that you could, actually monetize yourself, so that instead of that literal value leak, if you're a DeFi person, you probably think in these terms. That literal value leak is going to a third party, right? That third party is observing your actions, vacuuming up all those data points about you, and then repackaging them and selling them to the highest bidder. And these are enormous markets. I mean, the data market is much bigger than the crypto market today. And this is happening whether you like it or not, and it's happening with your data. So the first sort of perspective to it is, what have you thought about privacy not as necessarily even like a human right, but what have you thought about it as a commercial advantage, right? Not just in terms of how can you shield proprietary and sensitive information from third parties who may use it then to their advantage when competing against you, but also how can you literally monetize that data instead of letting somebody else in the supply chain, if we want to call it that, monetize it for you, right? That's part one. And then part two is we're clearly headed towards a world where data breaches have become the norm. You see them daily, and it's companies all the way from 23andMe to Air France to the biggest enterprises in the world, right? All the way down to sort of viral LOL type moments like the T app, and then the other version of the T app, which was like the T app for men, where sure, it was just a small indie app, but at the end of the day, it leaked tens of thousands of people's driver's licenses, private messages, a lot of things that they thought they had been doing in confidence. And just because something happens a lot doesn't mean it can be normalized, right? So there are going to be impacts from this. People's lives are going to be negatively impacted, and there will be commercial and regulatory consequences as a result. So to come back to your earlier point about how people are kind of freaked to build in privacy, like, yeah, I think that historically there's been a lot of baggage around it, especially because regulatorily it's not been viewed favorably, especially when you look at financial privacy. But the fact of the matter is actually the opposite. It may very well come to be where in the very near future, you'll be forced by regulation to use privacy preserving technology to custody, and we'll get into why you don't necessarily even have to custody that data, but to hold these users' information, right? Why not doing it is not just an option, but it may actually be forced upon companies in the near future, especially as more and more sensitive data points start to be created and then put out into the wild. And this covers everything from genomic sequencing, DNA data, all the way to financial data, private messages, all kinds of things. So these are huge markets that need to be protected against. And I may have ranted a little bit there, but that was the data.
I love it. We're here for the passionate rants, man. And something I'll say also that we didn't really touch on yet is that we are currently in the age of AI, right? Like our data is so valuable, and now with AI, that it gets a lot more scary with all the things that are possible with your information. So I think that making it like something that's a requirement of these larger companies that are stewarding data of individuals, I think that actually could be really positive if implemented correctly, right? So I'm curious, like how Nillion is enabling private computation on encrypted data, and kind of the use cases that exist with that.
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so let's start with like a couple of the examples that I've already touched on. I'll do one ecosystem application and one Nillion Labs led application. So one ecosystem application that's very interesting, and they're really doing cutting edge research here. It's really very different from the kinds of things that you might generally see if you're in the crypto space, where you see a lot of repetitions of the same ideas done over and over again. The interesting thing about Nillion, but also the challenging thing, is that almost every application built on Nillion is a complete primitive, right? That means they're constructing a whole new business model that's geared around the concept of user-owned data versus app-owned data, which means users can come, they can revoke consent cryptographically. I'll explain what that means in a bit. And they can take their data, import it from one application to the next without relying on that app essentially profiting from slurping up their data. So one very interesting application is called Monadic DNA. And I don't know, maybe I should drop the link under here, or maybe I can ping it to you in our chat, so we can append these to the
Sure.
What you're
We
sharing
can
on
also
Spaces.
screen share if there's anything you want to share throughout the stream here.
Awesome. Yeah. For now, let me just drop this to you, and then we can sort of add these here. But Monadic DNA, I'll send it in our chat here.
Cool.
Monadic DNA is essentially the privacy preserving response to 23andMe. So if you're familiar with 23andMe, you already know what happened. If you're not and you're listening to this, 23andMe is and was a genomic sequencing company, which allowed you to basically spit in a vial, send that to a lab, it gets processed, it tells you a bunch of very useful information about yourself, and then there's all kinds of other variations on this as well, like ancestry.com, etc. Now, 23andMe obviously, was custodying this data, and at one point, inevitably, we'll get to this, there was a data leak, right? Because anything that has a backdoor will be exploited eventually, and that's what we're building our model on, that there cannot be a backdoor. Cannot be a permission to look at the data, not by anybody at the company, not by anybody on the outside. So what does that mean practically? You might say like, okay, that's just a bunch of random data points about me. The point about AI that you raised, Rachel, which I think is very interesting, is that AI makes it so that any other third party that wants to will in the future, having collected this vast array of data points about each individual, draw whatever conclusions and find inferences and connections between data points that would be impossible to the naked human eye or to a human being, right? That means that two completely separate things that you're doing that you think have no relation to each other, when analyzed by an AI algorithm scraping through every data point of every click you ever made and every step you ever took, can find things that are not good for you. And what I mean by that isn't necessarily even that they'll use it against you, but it could be that they use it against you in the sense of going to an insurance company and saying like, oh yeah, this brand new research, there's this new research that doesn't have regulations around it, which means that the laws around how you can or can't use this particular sort of health data is not clear, and therefore companies can do whatever they want. And that means that, for example, there could be a future where they say, well, we have all this very sensitive information, something like genomic sequencing, we can sell it to insurance companies so they can then adjust people's premiums based on predispositions they might have, right? So that's one example. And so Monadic DNA kind of seeing that, and seeing that at the same time in states like New York State, they're passing laws where newborns have to be genomically sequenced, realize this is basically a massive honeypot in the making of the entire, American population. Born
Scary.
So, yeah, so there has to be, it's not that we're going to stop doing genomic sequencing because we're the human race and we're progressing scientifically, but we have to do it in a way that ensures that this very sensitive data is not eventually leaked to the highest bidder. And so Monadic DNA came, and they leveraged the Nillion tech stack to build a privacy-preserving alternative to this, right? Last year in Denver, for ETH Denver, which was in February, they ran their first pilot, which I actually participated in, and it was really cool. Historically, the first time it's ever been done, where you spat in a vial, you sent that saliva to their private lab. That private lab had, I won't go into the nitty-gritty of it, but basically this anonymized identity for you, an identifier for you to know what to log in with. And then you had the equivalent of a private key so that only you could see what your genomic sequencing results were, right? And then with this opens a whole nother kind of landscape or ecosystem of opportunities where people could, for example, choose to privately lease their data so that it can be computed on by third parties like medical research companies, etc., without ever actually giving up custody of that data. So it also unlocks a lot of commercial opportunities that would not be available in the existing model of you share your data once, well, it's gone forever. Now it belongs to whoever you shared it with in the entire universe, right? This makes it so you can actually lease it on a per compute basis, so that if somebody else wanted to come and say, hey, for example, I want all males ages 30 to 40 that fit yada, yada, yada criteria, I want to compute on this to find whatever it is that I'm looking for. All of those individual users could consent to allow the computation to happen on their data, in a privacy preserving way that never actually shows their individual data points, and then be remunerated for that or compensated accordingly. So that's one application example, and I can pause there before I go into another one in case you have any questions.
Yeah, well, now you just got my brain firing on all the different things that I feel like maybe could exist to protect individuals. I also saw another project that's doing like retina eye scan, like of biometric data. And I guess there's just a lot of questions I have around some of this stuff. But I do want to make sure, Deez, if you have any questions or thoughts you want to chime in with, feel free.
No, fascinating stuff. Really, really looking forward to getting into. I mean, because correct me if I'm wrong. I think the true adoption comes when there are commercialization opportunities, right? When there's money on the table, someone will come in and force their way through the door. So I really love going through these examples because, privacy technology and use cases have been floating around our industry for so long. But I think it's important we really air out these use cases and get people thinking because, someone is out there thinking about a new company that they want to launch and a lot of it's going to be ended up using data, right? And leveraging LMM models to provide some optimized services. So I think it's important we go through these use cases and kind of get the ideas rolling and hopefully inspire those entrepreneurs out there to look into Nillion when they might not have known it existed. So yeah, let's just keep on.
That's a great point. I mean, I think part of the difficulty that privacy technology has had historically is that it's framed very much as an ideological movement, and that's great. I mean, I'm for the most part aligned with most of the stances and the positions around it. But the fact of the matter is that alone is not necessarily enough for sustained and meaningful adoption. And I think that when you help people realize that there are actually new commercial models and income or revenue streams they can unlock by using privacy preserving technology, you might get people that really could not care less about the ideological component to start adopting this technology, which is then good for all the people who do care about it for ideological reasons. And the second thing that feeds into this, and I recently wrote a post on it, is I actually think it's very difficult to sell privacy tech if you call it privacy tech. So I think that it really is, especially because whether people are consciously aware of it or not, like they have this aversion to it of like, I don't have anything to hide. I don't have anything to hide. I'm a good person, right? And it's like, of course, that's the result of like decades of brainwashing and psyops against the general population.
Yeah.
Like you have a
I was gonna mention this comment here. We got a comment from Emery who says people who say privacy is for people with something to hide are the same people who close the door when they use the bathroom. So yeah.
Correct. But even then, they are doing it and they still have an aversion to it, right? So I think for those people, and for let's call it the mainstream in general, because you got to get out of the niche at some point. I think it's actually useful to frame it as security tech. So almost everybody, like you said, puts a door on their bathroom, but also they have a front door with a lock on it. Ring cameras and CCTV are very common. Depending on your operating system, you probably have an antivirus. There's a million other security systems in meat space and digital space that people pay a lot of money for already. It's a huge and growing market. It's not going away anytime soon.
It's all security. Yes, and I think security. Privacy having that rebrand to security, right? Basic security things for individuals. I think that could be really good because of that stigma that comes with the term privacy, especially in our space.
Completely agree. I mean, you can do all the educating you want, but at the end of the day, sometimes it's just easier to go with the current, right? And if the current is telling you that there's no stigma associated with security, but there is some associated with privacy, that doesn't mean stop advocating for why privacy is important, unless you want to end up like in an Orwellian society. But it does mean like just speak to people in the language they are ready to be communicated to in, right? So security is one of those things, and it's the same. It's like if we want to tie it back to on-chain stuff very quickly, it's like everything we have in DeFi is great. And like we have all of these amazing mechanisms, like even what you've talked about with BMX and the ways that people can generate yield and do things that previously with intermediaries was simply impossible, right? But even then, like you can sell privacy security saying, hey, maybe when you go to use these tools, you want to leverage some privacy layer on the way there or on the way out so that your direct earnings, your yield, your position isn't directly associated with you, your physical self, because wrench attacks are a real thing. There's this guy, Jameson Lopp, on Twitter, who posts basically the wrench attack of the day every day. The frequency of them is like very disturbing.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, I think that it's been normalized, especially with things like ENS and a bunch of other things, to say, hey, this is me, this is where I live, and this is how much money I have. That's not good. You're making yourself a target. And unlike banks that have security and have vaults and have all these things, you having your 12-word seed phrase under your bed does not make for good defense against motivated attackers, right? So, yeah, privacy and security, I think, is a good way to frame it for both the data privacy and the financial privacy camps, and crypto included.
100%. Deez, not sure if you have anything you want to chime in with here. I know this is a topic you're very passionate about as well.
No, I agree with it. It's just having a little bit of foresight, and I mean, I guess fortunately, unfortunately, some of us have been in the industry long enough where we've seen maybe not a $5 wrench attack directly, but we've been in close enough proximity where it makes you rethink. Is it what is your motivation to be building in the industry, right? Is it to be building the product? Is it to be making a paycheck? Is it? I think a lot of us get drawn into the kind of X feed of KOL dumb, I guess. And so I think it draws some like longtime builders out into, the public, which I don't know. It's kind of rough when I see that when someone who's been a pseudo-anon for so long come out and they're like, I need to leverage my, my personality and my face, and I need to, grow my company. And especially if they're working in DeFi and they have, their close proximity to, I mean, there's multi-sigs, there's treasuries, there's all kinds of things where, yeah, the security is based on the people that are involved. And so it's just, yeah, especially in DeFi culture, I would definitely encourage folks, if people, I mean, even when new people come up and they're like, hey, what should I do? I'm starting this new role. I'm like, start a pseudo. That's probably the best thing you can do for just your psychological well-being and your day-to-day work ethic. I think it's easier to show up over the years because the industry is just so volatile, right? I mean, if there's a bad day or year of price action can really, put people into a tough psychological spot. And if they have, characters or identities they can lash out at, I've seen it happen in the past. So I think privacy, at least to a certain degree, is yeah, it's essential, and it's tough that we have to, I want to get into this further in this podcast, but I think commercialization is very important, but how we kind of weave the song and dance of usability and application, and everyone's struggling to get product market fit, right? And so where's privacy on the roadmap? But it is important to think about it, and I think as soon as you have any kind of traction and ability to move autonomously with a customer base that's not going to leave, I think if there's option on the roadmap and in the sprints, definitely trying to prioritize some kind of layer, like you said, Juan. I think we did have or Meow Source is actually an advisor for Veil Cash on Base. So that is like, it's step one, right? If we were to kind of provide a UX, right, on your way in or on your way out, to at least have one degree of separation for your transactional history. But then, yeah, just before this, I was chatting. I just listened to your podcast with Josh from Zcash, like looking into shielded transactions and unshielded, like where you can choose your level of obscurity, for example. But now I'm on the rant. You gave me the mic for too long. We got to get back. I'm on the edge of my seat for the second use case. We just got done with this awesome genetic alternative to the 23andMe, but I'm excited to dive into the next one.
Yeah, well, that actually ties into the next question I was going to ask for Juan. I'm curious why privacy is so essential for builders, for creators, and for everyday users, people who are experimenting in the on-chain space. Like, why is it so essential, especially in our industry?
Yeah, maybe I can tie part two of the previous question and this one together by
Sure.
giving like an example of something people can actually play around with, because maybe what I've been mentioning so far seems like a okay, cool theory, but where is it in practice? So NILGPT is our take on a privacy preserving ChatGPT alternative. This is one of the apps in the product suite that's being built by Nillion Labs itself, is it like with its internal accelerator. And maybe you can drop this. I sent it to you on TG. Maybe you can drop it in the comments.
Dropping that in the live stream chat.
Amazing. I mean, look, this is sort of a first iteration at it. The functionality is not going to be exactly what you'd find with something like ChatGPT, but I think we're catching up pretty quick, right? It's much harder to build privacy preserving technology than not. That's part of the reason why people sometimes don't. But even this week, there will be pretty big updates announced, so you can keep your eyes peeled for that. But to your point about creators, builders, everybody else, everybody in this industry, just like every other industry that, at least if it's geared around tech, right, uses an AI chatbot in their day to day. Like I know very few people personally who don't. I think most people would view it as a disadvantage to not touch it at all. However, if you think about it, you are sharing a lot of very sensitive information with those chatbots, right? Like it could be something from as innocent as, hey, I'm trying to make lasagna, what's a recipe, all the way to, hey, Deez may be talking about talking to ChatGPT about one of the smart contracts in a potential exploit that maybe they're seeing it could be a problem down the road, or something they want to change with some yield mechanism. And then, for example, if he made the innocent and very simple mistake of sharing that conversation or that output from ChatGPT with somebody else on the team, well, congratulations. Now it's been indexed by Google, right? I'll find the link of this dashboard that somebody built where you can just read through random people's chat history. Have you already seen this, Rachel?
No, I haven't seen that.
Okay, I'll see if I can multitask and find
This
that.
is
But basically,
wow.
Perplexity, Claude, Grok, ChatGPT, any output that was ever generated and then shared by the user was indexed by Google. So that means, for example, I've looked through it myself just to see what kinds of information was shared. Randomly, I got some that were crypto related. So, for example, people sharing invoices, timestamps, UTXOs.
Oh my God.
Yes, pretty sensitive stuff, or all the way down to, for example, a lawyer talking about fairly sensitive, client information, and then probably sharing it with somebody else at their firm, and then now it's indexed by Google, and so now they're the ones defending from the lawsuit. Now they're the ones getting sued, right? So the point is that with all these chatbots that are not built with security and privacy at the core, these things are, whether it's user error or they call it that or something else or a straight up leak later, they're bound to happen. I mean, Sam Altman himself has said on various podcasts that people should be cautious of what they type into ChatGPT because that data is retained indefinitely, and then they can be compelled by third parties to reveal that data at a later point in time. So maybe
wow,
that's
really rough. That's rough.
It
I'm
really is.
curious
And
now,
yeah.
okay, because OpenAI, I mean, this is something I saw recently, and I'm sure, Juan, you have a lot of thoughts on this, but I saw a project called WorldCoin recently. Like they were doing this event in LA, and they're scanning people's retinas, and this data is owned by OpenAI. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, because I saw it and I was like, yeah, I don't know.
I mean, my personal opinion, hell no, I'm not doing
Yeah.
that.
What incentive do I? Oh, and I got a comment here. I will neither confirm nor deny whether I like lasagna. Smart, Dialepia.
Yeah, I mean, if you tell that to NILGPT, then it'll be a secret. If you tell ChatGPT, well, then they'll know. But I think especially with stuff like biometrics, obviously we have a problem now, especially if you're on X, you know this, where almost everyone is a bot, and it's becoming very difficult to tell. And they're getting better, right? They're advancing, so it's more like you might even end up having a conversation and realize 3 comments in, like, I've been talking to a bot, haven't I? And so there's a bunch of approaches to how do we prove that people are human, right? And that impacts a bunch of other stuff. The way information circulates, it goes all the way down to voting and a bunch of other things, right? Like it's a very serious problem that touches on a lot of different fields and industries. And biometrics is one of them. So I'll say that I'm really not a fan of biometrics, and especially not a private entity holding onto biometrics which are permanent.
Because they can do whatever they want with that, and it's a for-profit private organization, so it's not at the interest of the people. It's at the interest for profit margins using your data.
Yes, I mean, you're putting a lot of trust in a third party, and I think what we need to move towards, similarly to the way crypto moved away from like trust these giant institutions that have been shown time and time again to do things that are not in your best interest. Look at the smart contracts instead, immutable code on chain. I think the data and data privacy and data security needs to move in that direction as well, where it's not, well, I really hope they're not going to do bad stuff with my data or something that's not going to be good for me. Rather, having it be A, don't participate in those games, and B, if you absolutely must because you're compelled to or whatever else, then ensure that they're at least custodying that data in a way that is breach resistant, right? Because the only thing worse than a for-profit private company having your biometric data is then having that biometric data sold on like the black market. And you've seen tons of cases, like KYC is a common thing that always comes up, where They say KYC to keep you safe and prevent crime and all this stuff. So upload your ID, and then what happens? All those IDs get leaked.
Yep.
They're sold to the highest bidder on the black market, and then those IDs are used to make fake accounts on centralized exchanges, and the cycle goes in circles like that forever, right? So, yes, I guess that was a rant. But
well, no,
yeah.
I'm curious your thoughts, and this is we're going off script here. You got off the agenda, but I'm curious what your thoughts are around KYC. Like, it's interesting because I can see these exchanges wanting to protect against malicious entities and bad actors, but then that's actually feeding these bad actors and malicious entities our data. So it's like, how do we like kind of have this middle ground where there's like protection and we're safe, but like we're not giving up sensitive information?
Yeah, I mean, it's really tricky, right? Like the first thing, and by the way, I also, as we digress, I should say that these are all now opinion. Like all the stuff about Nillion
Yeah.
is Nillion, and all these are all my personal opinions, right? Um, but I think it's really tricky. I mean, the first thing is I don't actually think any of these companies want to implement any of this. They're forced to, right?
Mm.
Now, once they're forced to, they have to absorb those costs and either eat them themselves or pass them on to their customers. Some might pass them on to their customers, leading to whatever a higher percentage taken on each swap on this X, or a higher whatever first cost of sign up, whatever it is, right? And some others might say we won't pass it on, but we're just gonna like skate by with the bare minimum, and then you end up with situations like Coinbase outsourcing, a lot of the work to places that they had very little control or oversight in terms of like these external contractors working with very sensitive customer data, and then you had this giant KYC data leak where now basically if you use a lot of these sexes, not only Coinbase but many of them, right, for different reasons, your data is now out there and floating, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? And then that ends up in sometimes in the worst situations like the wrench attack stuff we were talking about, that happens. And then on the lower end of the spectrum, things that are just annoying, like getting 10 spam texts a day saying you have to reset your Coinbase password or your
Oh yeah.
whatever Kraken password or whatever it is. So I think people are working towards solutions where it's like, well, the question isn't even is it effective or not, because I think most people don't really believe it's effective. I think the question is, regardless of that, if companies are in fact forced to do it, what's the best way of doing it that keeps customers safe? And there's ZK companies working on this, like proof of identity and a bunch of other stuff that can basically confirm that you are who you say you are, and you are the age you say you are, and you are in the jurisdiction you say you are in, without actually handing over that ID to be stored in a database that could then be leaked.
Right. And I am curious, like, just to kind of tie this all back in, Deez, I know one of the points on our agenda we wanted to touch on was like how BMX intersects with this whole movement of privacy or security, I should say, privacy and security.
For sure. Yeah, I touched on it earlier. I think it's the most important thing is just to be aware of it and to be very keen on the technology that's out there that's ready to plug and play. Because regardless of what we think about it or what we value, our dev roadmap is still a dev roadmap. Like we only have so many hours in the day of what we can integrate. But I think it is very, very much so timing. So as soon as there is some kind of velocity or more of a semblance of product market fit where you truly can just pick and choose what to develop based on, without any kind of worry about a runway or adoption or think like that. I think anyone who finds himself in a place of privilege of just product improvement um, should definitely, I mean, be actively exploring these avenues of how to create those layers, as Juan was saying, either on the way in or on the way out, and then even more comprehensive. Because as we get further along, adoption and people, I mean, people will just be more and more aware of this. These stories are going to get crazier and crazier because, as Juan was saying before, the more and more data is out there, and we're at like a 5 to 10% adoption rate of AI tools in the workplace, and that's just going to get more and more, and we're going to see more nefarious actors or people who want to exploit certain instances just use these models to go access this data that's available. And then I don't know how many oh shit moments we'll need, but the consumers will come around at some point where they're actively demanding to use services that have these protections, and hopefully that's sooner than later. But yeah, of course, I mean, BMX will definitely be on that forefront of instilling some kind of tooling on the way in or on the way out, or using the product to create that solution for the demand. So.
I think that's really incredible. And, I see that in the philosophy of different members of the BMX team. Like, it's something that's very important to this team. So naturally, I feel like we'll just align with projects that are prioritizing that, like Nillion. And I am curious, Juan, I'm sure this is something your team probably discusses on a regular basis, but how do you break down the complexity of privacy tech into simple, digestible layman's terms so it's understandable for the average person?
Yeah, I think this is one thing that the crypto industry in general struggles
Struggles
with,
with.
which is that more so than any of the rest of tech, more than SaaS, more than anything, because with SaaS, you're selling directly to your B2B, and your B2B, so all your marketing materials geared towards the personas at the companies that are buying from you. And if you're, developer SaaS, then you're targeting devs. If you're MarTech SaaS, you're targeting marketers and user acquisition people, and it's very, very clear. Crypto has this weird relationship with the end user where, because of the nature of what crypto is, and like spanning from 2020 onwards, it developed a direct relationship with the people who in reality should be almost one step removed, right? So like, if I'm Amazon Web Services, I do webinars and I do things marketing to the people who will use cloud services. I don't market to the people who then use Spotify, which runs on AWS directly, right? And I think a big problem is that these companies, everyone is guilty of this to some extent, right? Some do it better than others. They are marketing stuff that should be marketed directly to the power user of the technology, to the end user of the applications that are built on that technology. And so I think, right, instead of saying, hey, Nillion is basically, ironically, what I started with, it's like, it uses NILGPT, which is an encrypted database split across 3 nodes, and then it links up to NIL AI, blah, 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 all this stuff. Nobody cares, right? What they care about is you show them NILGPT and you say, NILGPT is ChatGPT without people reading your shit, right? And then they might say, what do you mean people reading my shit? I'm only talking ChatGPT. It's like, no, you're talking to a server owned by a third-party company where somebody has the keys to that. And we've heard crazier stories, right? We heard about this, I think it was a Facebook engineer or a series of them who were like monitoring their ex-spouse's movements by accessing the data that they were sharing with the app because they had the credentials to do so. Like, creepy stuff. And so instead of this whole spiel, you say ChatGPT means that people could theoretically read your shit if they're not already, and NILGPT means they can't. And then if they really want to find out how that happens, then we have the documentation to show them, if they're technically inclined or curious enough to do so, how that goes on. But as with the rest of crypto and a lot of other tech, you just got to lead by value proposition and abstract away all the complexities of what's going on under the hood.
Yeah, wow. I think there's one thing you said that stuck out to me is that we need to eliminate the backdoor, right? There needs to be no backdoor. The people working at these big corporations and big companies should not have access to people's individual data, right? Because it just leads to so many ethical just issues, right? So yeah, definitely agree with you there. And Deez, not sure if you want to chime in here.
Yeah, I'd like to, more of your just opinion on privacy tech in general. If I'm thinking about like what really got adoption, I think maybe I'd love to hear your opinion here, but I think DuckDuckGo maybe was the easiest or maybe biggest one that I know of that just has more broad adoption at this time, and that's just to privatize or help guard against cookies and stuff on browsing. But what? How much attention do you think, or is this at the VC level, or is it at the team level, or how do we get more attention, I guess, on the user experience or the development speed of the products themselves versus, the hardcore tech behind it? Would you agree that that's probably the vertical that more of these industries need to focus on and try to be competitive, or are we simply at a spot where we're just not ready to go after, the mainstream yet, and there's still tons to be built under the hood?
That's a really good question. There's sort of like with every other industry, there's infighting within every niche, including within the privacy tech niche in crypto, right? So privacy tech and security, like everything else, is a spectrum. Like that, what I mean by that is that if cryptographically there is no backdoor, that's not a spectrum. That's binary. It's either there is a backdoor or there's not, right? But then when you think about how does a user connect to the app and what kind of attacks could happen on the way and what happens with the metadata and all these things, that's where the spectrum is created, right? And there are people working in privacy who think that we're doing research that will give us perfect privacy within however many years, and it's all academic work, which is obviously academic work is the foundation of all these things. But the problem is it doesn't get apps into people's hands today, right? And then there are other people who I think are more open-minded to it, and I would say Nillion is one of those teams where we view all the privacy technologies, things like multi-party computation and trusted execution environments and homomorphic encryption and all these things as different tools that complement each other. It can be mixed and matched to accomplish different outcomes. So, for example, if we're talking about NILGPT, NILGPT is the most, in my opinion, I think most of the team shares this, if not already, going to be the most private internet connected chatbot that exists, right? However, the most private chatbot you could have would be one that runs locally on a computer where you've ripped out anything that can connect to Wi-Fi from the hardware, and you are in a cave like surrounded by aluminum foil. Like that would be the safest thing. However, is that pragmatic? Probably not. Very few people will use that. It probably, unless you have a lot of money to spend on a lot of hardware, won't be able to run some of the bigger models you see that are commercially popular. And so I do think you have to have some flexibility then there in terms of like what are the best tools we have today to accomplish the job at hand in a way that helps people minimize their data footprint. Because I think that's one of the other things that's really overwhelming, right? People look at it and they're like, oh shit, I use Google, I use Facebook, I don't use a VPN, I'm like a sitting duck, I might as well not do anything. Well, that's very defeatist attitude, right? Like, yeah, you probably won't become Edward Snowden overnight, but if you can switch from Gmail to Proton Mail, and you can switch from no VPN to a reputable VPN, and you can switch from Telegram, Wink to the crypto industry, to Signal, and you do a few other things, right? Like moving from closed proprietary source software to open source software, all of a sudden you've reduced the data footprint that you create on a daily basis by enough that if attackers who wanted to like impersonate you, scam you, and do any other sort of like mischief, any sort of nonsense, right, with your information, they would choose somebody else because they're the people who never took this step. So any step is better than no step. No
Yep.
tool is perfectly safe and bulletproof. I think anybody who's telling you that is probably just trying to sell their wares. And the most you can do today is taking some steps. So I don't even know at this point if I actually addressed the initial question. I think I got sidetracked in talking about the flexibility. Deez, would you mind reiterating?
No, I do love all your points there. I'm thinking more so, yeah, like on these companies that have backing. I mean, because every company has an engine, right? And that's part of the engine is the financial engine. So whoever's backing it, and then part of it is the team's engine. And I guess where do you see? Do you think there needs to be more of a push from those? I don't know which entity or which part of the engine to expedite these consumer facing products, even it's in a really competitive market, right? And the ease of use is just crushing everyone who tries to come up with something that's even close. I think it's like those examples that you mentioned. I mean, the crypto industry runs on Telegram just because it's so easy to like
So
bounce
true.
around chats and network, even though Signal was born out of the rebellion to the WhatsApp takeover. And so yeah, where do you see? I mean, do you think there needs to be an entire new venture arm that goes out there and says, "Hey, we're gonna fund privacy companies, but they need to be laser focused on consumer application"? Or do you think we're okay in a sense where we're at the pace that we need to be? I don't know if there's a right answer.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, first off, I'll say that not just in privacy, but every crypto in general, tech in general, we need to just get apps into people's hands. Like theory is great, it's awesome, but unless it's put into practice, it's theory. So I absolutely think that's true. I also oftentimes hear something that I don't agree with, which is like, well, we got to do something now because nobody uses privacy apps. Signal has, I think, 40 to 70 million users, monthly active users. Proton has 100 million plus ARR. The VPN market is enormous. So obviously these are still very small markets relative to, let's call them mainstream markets. Like Proton Mail has half a percentage point of the entire hosted email market, right? But that's still 100 million users. So one thing that I'd say to people who are like, oh, well, I care about privacy and I like to build in it, but there's no users, is like, you could actually nail a niche, right? You could come in and nail a niche, and that niche is, it's only a niche in relation to something like Proton Mail is a niche in relation to Google Mail, but it's still 100 million users, right? So I don't think it's true that people aren't using privacy preserving tooling, paying a premium for it, and sometimes, in many cases, are willing to trade off some features and functionalities for privacy guarantees. So I think that market already exists and it's growing. Unfortunately, I think there's an inverse relationship between number of bad things happen in world and amount of people who start using these tools, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I think that things aren't looking great right now in terms of like the internet at large. So I think that's driving more people in that direction. But I mean, to your point, Deez, if there is venture capital heading into privacy, yes, I think it's going to have to be with companies that are very much laser focused on bringing consumer apps to market as soon as possible, rather than think tanks and that sort of like research firm, let's call it.
So and just so NILGPT, are you guys really going for the equivalent, of a Claude or an OpenAI, but at the privacy level, or is it more of just an example of the tech?
I'd say so. NILGPT is definitely being built out with the intention of this being a fully fledged consumer application that people can use as an alternative. Like that doesn't necessarily mean be dogmatic and only use NILGPT for everything. It might mean that if you want to have conversations with ChatGPT about how to make lasagna, you do it there. But maybe if you're discussing like your blood work and you're discussing, relationship troubles, or you're using it as some sort of like companion, then maybe you are talking to NILGPT instead, right? And you could use those too. And because we are using open source models in it, and we're going to add bigger models over time, and features like internet search and a bunch of things that should get it to feel like it's at parity for people with let's say like everyday use cases. Maybe like somebody who needs the latest for coding or something like that may not necessarily use it. But maybe if there's some situation in which for some reason they had to share confidential information related to what they're building, maybe they take it to NILGPT and then take it back to wherever else they're doing things. But yeah, the goal is basically to take NILGPT to market, and then so, it's going to be open sourced. I'll give you a little teaser very, very soon, like within the week. And
Wow,
then that
let's
means
go.
yeah, it's exciting. So that means if you like it and you think you could have a different take on NILGPT that focuses on something else within a model that you trained in a particular way, or with a different user experience or whatever it is, you copy paste and you go after your market, right? So NILGPT is sort of the framework to show people what this actually looks like in practice in a way that's very easy to understand, because you can understand when you play around with it and experience it, you'll see what I mean. You see what it means for it to be private, and that's something that you can naturally sort of intuit without having to read any documentation or white papers or anything like that. So it's both things at once: a framework and an app in and of itself.
That's incredible, and I can't wait to see the teasers. Real quick, Deez, I just want to do a quick time check. We are getting to the top of the hour here. I was curious, Juan, if we wanted to show the website really quick, because the website's so beautiful. If we want to show people where to get started, maybe.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Let's pop this up really quick. And Deez, were you gonna say something?
Yeah, no. While you guys are pulling it up, I just, that market for the personal companion. Like, I'm on NILGPT now, and I see the three different options here: the companion, wellness, and personal assistant. I think there's a huge opportunity there. I think the consumers are probably going to be adopting these LMMs, these services, for more personal things way before they start using it, for more abstract things. I mean, I know of us, professionals, we do that to solve problems, but
I don't know if you're able to switch tabs to it, but maybe actually NILGPT would be an easier way to get people started. Because like I said, it's kind of the gateway into all the stuff that is on the Nillion page.
Where can I find that?
So let me send this to you right now.
Sure. By the way, beautiful website. I have a lot of respect for you guys. A lot of care and time has gone into the marketing, the branding of all of this. And just curious, like, I don't really know what, do you guys have like a relationship with Base? Are you guys choosing the Base ecosystem to primarily build, or it's just you happen to have the blue?
No, happen to have the blue.
Okay.
But Base
I
is
was
cool. Yeah. No direct connection there. I just sent you the link.
cool. Let's check it out. I'm excited. All right.
And this is something that anybody can use, crypto, non-crypto, but it does give you the option to create an account with an EVM address. So with any wallet you have, you could just create a throwaway address, literally just generate new wallet, use that to connect, and yeah, then you get to see it. The really cool thing is that it is encrypted client side. So you could actually see if you went in later and entered the wrong passphrase, you would see what this looks like to anybody else, which is literally just gibberish. And I think that's a really cool. We may remove that at a later point in time, but at the beginning to show people what's happening under the hood a little bit. It's sort of an experiential thing where you can see like, I see if somebody at Nillion tried to look at this, what would they see? And it's literally just random symbols and characters, right? So
wow.
Yeah.
This is really incredible. So this is usable now. People can go to the app and chat like today if they wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
That's correct,
awesome.
yeah.
And you guys, the website is nilgpt.xyz /app I'm seeing. So yeah, if you guys want to try this out, it's available today. And just this really seems like a more secure and private alternative to OpenAI. Like, and you know, these tools that are, you know, have private, you know, third-party companies that have all your data. So this is really awesome. Deez, not sure. Do you have any questions or anything you want to add here?
No, I'm really excited about this vertical. I think the market is ready for the first, de facto private alternative to the Claude and the OpenAIs and Geminis of the world. So I'm excited to see whether that's Nillion or someone who uses the open source framework. But I think as soon as, I don't know, whichever one is first to market or has the budget or runway to, to put these reasoning models in and provide something that's truly, away from prying eyes. I'm excited to see the adoption rate.
Yeah, and I love that this is baked in up here. You have your personal assistant, you have a wellness assistant, and a companion. So basically, depending on what you're looking for, I like that that's kind of baked in here. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's so part of what we were thinking when we designed it like this was, if you look at any of the sort of mainstream chatbots right now, it's like now ChatGPT 5 has eliminated that problem, but before it was like 6 different models. It's like faster, slightly faster, but even faster. It's like, and I think it makes it very difficult for people who aren't following AI all day to figure out what they want. Well, with this one, we're gonna add more fine-tuned models. They're gonna be bigger. They're going to be more cutting edge over time. This is a smaller model to start with, but the idea is that you come in with maybe there's more use cases or verticals we want to split it up into, but you're looking for a model based on what you're trying to accomplish, not the technical specifications of the model itself, right? So that was sort of a way to navigate it more seamlessly.
That's incredible. And by the way, I did see a question come in from somebody in the live stream chat. So how does NILGPT differ from something like Venice AI? Dialethea asks.
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are a bunch of very interesting privacy preserving chatbot applications out there today, which is great for us because Nillion's been researching privacy preserving AI inference for several years now. So it shows, I think, that we were aiming in the right direction. I think what we're trying to showcase here with NILGPT that is different to a lot of the other alternatives you see floating today is that at no point is the data decrypted. So again, we're going back to what privacy is a spectrum, right? So what that means is that there could be privacy preserving AI chatbots. And I don't want to call anybody out by name, but like you can do your own research. Basically what's happening is the way that it's private is they're saying your identifier, whether that's a username or maybe there's no sign in at all or whatever it is not tied to your query, to the prompt that you're asking, right? Which, given enough time and enough prompts, you can start to, if you had access to all of them, you could probably de-anonymize somebody, right? And figure out this same person asked all these things. You keep asking about what's the weather in Florida like at this, and is it going to rain this day for this time, whatever it is, right? Over time, you create enough data points where using AI, you can de-anonymize someone. Same thing carries over to, I think, a lot of the conversations right now about like financial privacy in crypto. So with NILGPT, what we're showing you is all of your chat history is encrypted at rest. That means that when you see your chat history, those are chats that are only visible to you. They exist in something called a NILGPT, which is our encrypted database. And again, to keep this high level, I won't go into the specifications, but it's a cluster of nodes, all of which have different little portions of that data, which is meaningless in and of itself, right? Then when you ask that prompt, it's going through NIL AI, meaning that we can actually process the prompt and give you the response. And this is where it sounds like magic, but my catchphrase is it's not magic, it's math. We can give you a response. NILGPT can give you a response to that prompt without ever actually seeing the prompt itself or who it came from, right? So that is the key differentiator, is that the privacy isn't derived from saying, well, somebody in the stack can see what was asked, they just don't know exactly by who. It's nobody in the stack can see what was asked at all. So for example, in the analytics dashboard, you can see, user ID 12345 tied to a wallet has asked 20 prompts, but you have no idea what those prompts are, right? Like literally no clue.
Right.
Whereas with these other models, it might be, don't know how many prompts user 12345 has asked, but here are the prompts in plain text. If we wanted to access them theoretically, it's possible because they're decrypted at the moment of computation.
Got it. Wow. Well, that's really incredible. I love your catchphrase. That's awesome. It's not magic, it's math, you guys. So absolutely love everything you guys are doing. Real quick, just a final time check. We are at the hour mark here, but we have another question from a community member. We have time for one more question. So just on chain, shout out to Kings on Gennaro asks, how do we convince normies to think of data privacy, at least enough to adopt Nillion Network?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing is we all, regardless of whether it's Nillion or not, right? Because if Nillion alone wins, it's not enough. All of the privacy, the entire privacy stack needs to win, because Nillion doesn't cover every aspect of digital privacy, right? So in that sense, it's a shared effort. And I think in the same way that people promote apps to their friends and family today, why not do the same with privacy preserving technology? Like the way I've gotten a bunch of people into Signal is by basically being stubborn enough that I say, like, if you want to get in touch with me, obviously I can't do this.
That'll work. That works, man. I've connected with people, like, I don't know, one of the people I've known a long time out here in SoCal, who's into Bitcoin, is like, yeah, we're on Signal. If you want to talk to our team, that's where you talk to us.
And that's what ends up happening, right? So then there's always, like, different sectors have different problems. So network effects for messenger apps is obviously huge, because if you log into a new messaging app and there's nobody that you know in that network, then it's literally useless to you. Whereas with something like private AI, it doesn't matter. You don't need anybody else in it, because it's a solo player, right, kind of situation. But I mean, yeah, with things like communications technology, get everybody that you're friends with and your family and whatever to start using Signal. It's free. And then in terms of, like, all the different apps that are built, like, on Nillion and elsewhere, if you're using an app and you're benefiting from it, either because it's generating you some revenue by finally being able to monetize your data, or because it's giving you, like, peace of mind that you know that you're taking back control over your digital footprint and you're not just letting faceless, like, shadow figures exploit you, because that's literally what it is, even if you don't want it to be, then share that with your friends and family, right? Like, normalize it. And if the word privacy is going to scare them away, then call it security, like we've been talking about. And I think that's the way you get people on, is just word of mouth.
Wow. Well, super grateful for the work you guys are doing. And I guess, so I have one final question here. I'm curious because I feel like a common, common feedback or meta around, like, people who aren't aware of what your data can be used for. A lot of people just, like, say they don't care. You know what I mean? It's like, whatever, everyone's information is out there. Who cares? Right? How can we kind of meet these individuals with more education and awareness of kind of the dangers and risks, so people start to understand the significance more?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, there are two kinds of people in this world, like people who are willing to change their mind and people who are not. So I think most people that you meet are open-minded enough that if presented with the right evidence, they will shift their worldview. And I think for those people, education works. There are people who literally do not care, and unfortunately those are the people who end up being victimized by, like, cybercrime and things like that, because it's like, when you talk to your, I don't know, your friend's mom, and she says, like, I don't care about passwords. I have my Becky123 is my password for everything. And then she's like, oh my God, they stole my social security number and now I can't get a loan, right? It's like, well, sorry, Becky, but, like, we all tried to tell you, just didn't care. Unfortunately, you learned the hard way now, and maybe you'll take some steps, maybe not. I think Becky is the archetype that you can convince with sort of the commercialization of privacy technology, where you say, Becky, look, this fun little app where instead of sharing your health information with this random third party, you share it with this privacy thing. It's going to give you 50 cents a week, right? Oh, okay, I'll choose that instead. So I think there's that there. And then for the other people, I really think it's like, basically they're like, I think it always works this way, where you might know why privacy and security is important to you, but that might not in any way resonate with the person you're talking to. So you figure out what their worldview is, and this is not like a be manipulative way. This is just like try to resonate with them, right? So you figure out what their worldview is, whether that's politically, ideologically, whatever it is, and you start to describe the scenarios of what it would be like in the world they don't want and how that relates to this tooling. And more often than not, people are like, you know what, that makes really good, that makes a lot of sense. What can I do differently? And then that's where the like hands-on education of like, oh, well, you can use this tool, you can use that tool starts. And from then it's like an endless journey, right? Because you can always improve something, but you got to start somewhere.
Awesome. Well, really great response to that final question there. Well, that's all I have on the agenda. We got through everything, you guys. Shout out to everybody tuning in today for engaging, for dropping questions. I've definitely seen a lot of folks be really engaged on this stream. So shout out to, you know, everyone that was here tuning in. Deez, do you have any final thoughts, calls to action, or anything you want to share on your end?
No, just thanks so much for the time, and hopefully, yeah, any entrepreneurs building in the data stack somewhere are keep Nillion in their back pocket and investigate, you know, how they can use the stack when push comes to shove, when they're commercializing a product that leverages data. So, thanks so much for putting the voices out there, and yeah, one piece at a time. We'll get there.
That's right. Thanks so much, Rachel. Thank you, Deez. Really enjoyed it. Thanks for fielding my rants. Hope it was also
That's what we're here for. That's what we're here for.
Awesome.
Juan, thank you so much for joining us today. And yeah, you guys, if you're watching, listening, tuning in, go check out Nillion Network, check out NILGPT and give it a try. Definitely extremely optimistic about what they're building. And yeah, where can they connect with you guys on socials, Juan?
Yeah, I mean, follow me at Juan AXYZ00. Then you have Nillion Network. At Nillion Network, you have Nillion at Nillion Eco for all updates on what's happening in our ecosystem. And finally, for NILGPT, it's at NILGPT_, because NILGPT was taken, of course. So yeah, that's it for now.
Sorry, I'm muted there. Well, Juan, thank you so much. And yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you all on the next Let's Ride. Thanks, everyone.
See you later.
Thank
Bye.
you.